Students, today we are on the poem Reflections by a very famous poet of Pakistan, Toufiq Rafat. We know him very well that he writes very simple and conveys the message of the Pakistani people in a so fascinating and beautiful way that his poetry has gained him a lot of accolades. But today's poem is very much different, as the title goes to suggest that it is reflections about poetry, about writing of poetry, about stages of writing of poetry, about choices of words, and of the kind of styles which the poets would like to adapt. This is, in fact, can be called as the kind of thinking of the poet, that how he composed poetry, what inspired him, and how he was able to compose all his thoughts into poetry, what kind of difficulties he used to face while he was composing one poem. So, in that way, reflection has got a very different type of understanding as compared to the other poem, yet it carries very beautiful colors of poetry in the shape of images, symbols that the poet has tried to use. But I must say that the whole poem cannot be recorded or taught in one go. It has got number of parts. I think it has got 11 parts. So the recordings on this poem will have 11 parts. It will be recorded in 11 parts. Today is going to be the very first part of the poem. First of all, before we enter into the poem, the poet has used Gautam Krishna's Kusinara's words in the beginning. He says, "Then the Blessed One said to the monks, Behold, now mendicants, I say to you, everything is subject to decay. Press forward untiring to perfection." This was his last word. Although this is not the part of the poem, but let's have a little understanding of all that. The lines mean that the followers or the students are being taught that you must continue to work perfectly or trying to become perfect, though one cannot be perfect most of the time. Everything has to finish. So that is why the efforts must continue. These should not be stopped at all. And the same kind of theme will be adopted by the poet in part one of the poem. The part one is like that. The long dry spell is over, waiting is ended. The paddy fields received the last monsoon, showers with a fierce gladness. It only needed this to turn the weather. So let us first of all talk about this first five lines. In these first five lines, the poet says two, three things. One, that dry spell has finished, and now it is the time that water or the rain should come, and that is why he says that monsoon showers would be there, and the paddy fields, the fields of rice, would grow up, and they will be happy and will be showing their greenness, and everywhere they will be spread. And he says that this change is the requiring thing is that for this change, the requiring thing is that the weather should be very fine. It means that when the water falls at that time, the paddy fields grow and spread themselves. As a result, it is the happiness which is spread all around. The same is the case with the poet. He says that the poet's dry spells do come, but after some time, when these spells are over, like the monsoon, the spells change into something good, and the poet is able to compose poetry in such a way as the paddy fields look beautiful, as the paddy fields spread all around, and they will look very much beautiful. In the same way, the poems are created by the poet. For example, the poet says, how he says this. He says, already there is new briskness in the air to which every living thing respond, and the poet too wakes up from his dreams and doodlings. The time for action is here, and action for some means words. This also reminds us of Wordsworthian thinking about the poetry. As, for example, the poet is saying here that for him, something which can change his mind from the dryness to something good, flourishing and spreading of poetry, that time has come. He says he is feeling this thing in the air, because air is briskly flowing, and that is why it is creating some energy in him, just like Wordsworth felt that when the air flows, the gusts of air create some internal energy in him. In the same way, he says that this thing is happening. The poet says that he is also affected, and that is why he dreams out sometime and then comes out of his dreams and comes out of his inaction also. And he says that the time has come now for the action. Wordsworth also says the same thing, and Chaucer also in the prologue to the Canterbury Tales, he says that the time has come because now rain is falling, because the spring season has come, and that is why he is able to write poetry now. The same thing our poet is saying here, that the time for action has come, and action is actually the words, the action of the words, and this action definitely would convert his words into poetry. It means that the words were already there, but the power, the inspiration was not there, which could convert his poetry or his words into poem. The poet continues, says, articulate again, I find white phrases tumbling in the air. So, according to him, he symbolizes that the poetic forms or the poetry or the words of poetry, they were already present in the air. He says that he may be able to capture them, but he was not able to do so till the time the weather has changed and the weather has inspired him. So he says, to my outstretched hands they come in a tightening gyre. The words he says I'm able to capture now, and they are still revolving in such a way that a great speed of these words is there. That's why he compares them with the gyre. As in the gyre, water or air moves very fast. In the same way, he says that because of the arrival of rain, because of the arrival of air, he is feeling that now he can capture these words, but still they are moving so fast. Then he says, willingly to be cooped in a poem's space. So he is encouraged by the situation in which he is, that everything is fine, every air is good one, weather is good one, and as a result, the poetry or the words of poetry are coming down towards him in great speed, and he says that he will be able to coop them up. That means he will be gather them up, he will be able to compose them, and as a result, he will be able to make out one poem out of all that. So this is the time for the poet, that the weather has inspired him, and that's why he should continue to write poetry. He further says, for the first time, I feel at the tensions of a mood grip, a rightness and adequacy which teased me with its nearness before. So, in a saffron apprehension, I start on my second pilgrimage. The poet says, that doubt is still there. Whether he may be able to continue or not, he says some type of feeling is present in him, and that feeling is about the tension of the mood, that he may be able to grip everything which is right, which is good, and which is continuous as well, which is good in quantity also, he will be able to do it or not. He says because of all that, he is feeling teased up to some extent, and because he is now quite close, quite verge of writing of poetry and composing a poem, but sometimes he feels that perhaps it's not full energy and it may go back from him, but still he is very much encouraged, and that is why he says his encouragement leads him to become a saffron apprehension, that he may be wearing the color of a saffron color, and as a result he may be having some fear in his mind as well. But alongside that fear, the poet says, I start on my second pilgrimage, that I will be able to write down poetry and tell the people what he's doing in the second part of the poem. So that was all about the first part of the poem. Hopefully we shall be meeting in the second part also. In this way, all parts will continue about this reflection. The first part can be concluded by saying that it is the jump start. The jump start because of the change of weather. As the change of weather from dryness to watery makes the plants flourish. The poet has given us the example of paddy fields, that they spread in greenness, that they become beautiful, that they are loaded with fruit. In that way, the poet says the season has changed, weather has changed, and the same thing has affected him. So that is why he's feeling a change in him. And that change is from the kind of inability of capturing words, of bringing words, and even if these words were present, the inability was there, that he cannot compose them into a poetic form. He says this thing is going to happen. He's feeling the energy for that. Though fears are there, but still he will be able to do so. So it is a kind of poetic process which the poet is revealing here. And for the inspiration and completion of poetic process, according to him, some are the inspirations which are required, and these are the natural inspirations. These are the surroundings. These are the birds. These are the air. These are the water, and these are the greenness and the nature everywhere that can inspire him. So he feels inspired because of the change of weather, and he says that he will be continuing to write that poetry. So therefore, here we close it in order to meet once again in the part 2. So if you like it, do not fail to hit the subscribe button as well as the like button. Comments will also be welcome here. So thank you for watching for this time.